Hello and welcome back to Unpopular People.
We believe that listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.
Today in our interview, Terry Tucker from the United States.
Terry is a cancer warrior for about 9 years.
He had so many jobs and so many professions, and you'll be very, very excited to hear what he has to tell you. But we will get to this in the next couple of seconds.
All information about this episode you'll find on our website on www.unpopularpeople.com.
To stay updated about us and our shop, please sign up for our newsletter and you will find out everything about us, about our episodes and about our podcast.
And now have fun with this interview.
Hi Terry.
Hi Ben and Lisa. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, how are you today?
Outstanding. How about yourself?
We are feeling very good. Yeah, we're really excited.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Hello from my side as well.
Absolutely.
We always start our conversation with a question to just give a little idea about you and yourself. And it's always the same. We always ask our guests the same question. It is, where were you born and how did you grow up?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. And my dad was in real estate and worked for McDonald's, the hamburger chain, and then eventually at the end of his career, Wendy's. So we moved around a little bit. So from Chicago, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, down in the South. I don't remember that much. That was really kind of right after I was born. And then we moved to Columbus, Ohio, and then eventually back to Chicago, where my mom and dad were from, and myself and my middle brother were born there. My youngest brother was born down in Atlanta.
Okay, and how was your childhood like? What do you remember?
I had a great childhood. I guess to give you a little bit of background of kind of it as an adult, which will kind of give you an understanding of my childhood. I'm 6'8" tall and played basketball most of my life. I have my middle brother is 6'6", and he was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association here in the States. And then my youngest brother is 6'7", and he was a pitcher on the University of Notre Dame baseball team. And then my dad was 6'5". So if you sat behind our family in church growing up, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on in front of us. But my mom was 5'7", and she was kind of the boss of the family. And whatever mom said went. It didn't matter how big we are or how strong we were. I just remember mom always running to the store to get milk because we were all growing and we were all growing fast. So I had a great childhood. Sports was a huge part growing up. My brothers and I played football, baseball, and basketball. I guess football, American football, not probably football, which you're used to, and that.
No soccer.
No. Soccer was not big when I was growing up. It's much bigger in the U.S. now than it was when I was growing up. I mean, it was pretty much American football, baseball, and basketball, and that was it.
And being so tall like you, you had the advantage to be probably a bit better than other smaller guys who were playing basketball. But did you see any advantages or disadvantages you think you should mention for other people that have the same size?
It's funny, when I was young, my biggest problem was finding shoes that fit. When I was 14 years old, I was 6'5", and I had a size 14 shoe.
Oh wow! Okay.
So you can imagine finding clothes was very difficult for me, and same with my brothers. But my curse was I had a long foot, but I also had a narrow foot. So finding long shoes that were narrow was almost impossible back then. Today you can find them all over the place, but back then for me it was really kind of clothing and that. But I liked being tall, and it took me a while for me to grow into my body. I always kid people that I was kind of like Dumbo. I I had kind of a small head and big ears, and it took a while for my head to grow into my ears and that. And I got teased. I got teased about that when I was young, and kids and that. But I was always bigger than them, so the teasing didn't go on very long. So.
And you also mentioned earlier. You mentioned the church. So was this a big part of your upbringing as well? Was it part of your family to go to church on a like weekly basis, or how does it work for you?
It was. We are still, and I grew up Catholic. Still am Catholic. Was an altar boy, altar server growing up, which was always kind of fun because if you.
What does it mean? The altar boy.
We would assist the priest during Mass, during the service, and help him with the different parts of the Mass. And the nice thing about that, and this is going to sound really, really terrible. The nice thing about that is if we served with the priest for weddings and funerals, we got paid for it. So it sounds kind of mercenary, and I don't mean it to be, but when you're a little kid and we didn't get an allowance, the only way we made money was either serving or cutting grass or shoveling snow or something like that. So it was just kind of another way to make a little bit of money on the side.
Okay. And did this shape you in any way, like in the way you act now? Like, do you like when you, for example, you say like you earned money by serving in a way? Do you still have the same belief, or did you grow out of this as well and start like to serve without anything in return?
I mean, the weddings and the funerals were very few and far between. I mean, it was pretty much every Sunday helping the priest, and we didn't get paid for that. It was just kind of a special occasion if we would get chosen to serve a wedding or a funeral. I mean, that's not something it's usually the other way around. You're giving to the church. It's not the church is giving to you. So absolutely today, my family, my wife and I, and our daughter give to the church. That's a big part of it. Faith is a big part of my life. I probably spend an hour every day praying. We'll probably get into this more, but with having cancer, for years, I would pray for other people because I've met a lot of people that really needed some help and things like that. And, it's only recently that I've really started asking for that miracle, from God to kind of take these tumors from my body and things like that. But I certainly have a tremendous amount of faith, and I really am not. I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of what's going to end up, down the road. I'm in a way, I'm kind of excited to see what happened. And I think that just goes back to the way I was raised and the faith that I had.
So does faith give you the confidence in this? So like believing in God and worshiping in any way, does it give you the confidence of not being afraid to die? Does it really come from there?
It does for me. I think it's more than that. I think it kind of goes to our purpose in life, and I believe we all are here for a reason. We all have. I believe we're all destined to live uncommon and extraordinary lives, and that has absolutely nothing to do with the kind of job we have, or how much money we make, or where we live, or what kind of car we drive, or anything like that. We are, and we know this. We're all unique. We're not all born with the same gifts and talents, but we all have the ability to become the best person that we're capable of becoming. And I can't imagine at the end of my life standing in front of our Creator, whoever or whatever you believe that entity to be, and being unable to account for the gifts and the talents that I was given, that I was born with, and that I didn't use to make the world a better place. So for me, that lack of fear, that sort of confidence in what's coming afterwards, has to do with the fact that I believe that I have found my purpose in life, and I've lived that purpose. And once I think you do that, I think you're much calmer, much more relaxed about meeting the end of your life.
And you said you think, or you believe that people are here for a reason. What is your reason? What do you think about yourself? What's your reason to be on Earth?
My reason, and this was kind of a struggle for me. I think there, and we know these people. There are people that they know they're going to be a doctor, or they know they're going to be a lawyer, or they know they're going to, take over their parents' business at some point in time, or whatever. They just know what they're going to do. And then there are probably the rest of us that sort of search and look for why we're here. And for me, I always wanted to be in law enforcement. I always wanted to be a police officer. My grandfather on my dad's side was a Chicago police officer from 1924 until 1954. I didn't know him very well. He died when I was like 7 years old, but his wife, my grandmother, lived until I was in college. So I got to hear a lot of fun stories about that. But my father was tremendously opposed to me being a police officer. My grandfather had been shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious, he was shot in the ankle, taking a murder suspect to jail. And they wrestled over his gun, and the gun went off and he was shot in the ankle. But my dad always remembered the stories that my grandmother told about the knock on the door from the command staff that said, Mrs. Tucker, please grab your son. Your husband's been shot. And he didn't want that for me. He wanted more. But my calling, what was in my heart was really to be in law enforcement. And we kind of struggled with that. I wanted to do it. He didn't want me to do it. So I did what every good son did. I waited till my dad passed away, and then I followed my dreams.
Oh, that's good to hear. And in the introduction, and now we heard that you had several jobs during your life so far. So tell us a little about your jobs. What did you do in the past? What kind of jobs? And all the process to becoming a police officer.
Sure. Yeah. I kind of get kidded that, one of these days I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. What are you going to do when you grow up? I have had quite a few jobs. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. So when I had I graduated with a business degree, and I graduated and I was all set to make my mark on the world with this newly obtained business administration degree. And I kind of laugh now and look back at that. I didn't know a thing about business, even though I'd graduated with a degree. There's so much, I have a degree, but there's so much you need to just on the job training and that. So my first job out of college was with Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. And from there, I was there about 3.5 years, and I was kind of it was the heyday of Wendy's, at least here in the United States. They were very successful. They were probably a Fortune 50 company in terms of revenue and that. But from there, I moved to hospital administration, and I was doing new product marketing for a fairly large, 1,100 beds, about a 5,000 employee hospital. And I met my wife doing that, and we were part of a leadership program. She was working for a bank, and the hospital sent me to this leadership program along with her organization that sent her. We met each other, fell in love, and got married. And from there, we moved to California, and that's kind of where I started in law enforcement. And it's funny. I remember sitting at the table one night, and there was an advertisement in a paper for a class at the local college that you could take, and if you passed it, you could become a police officer with the city of Santa Barbara. There was no guarantee that they would take you, but there was a possibility. So I remember sitting there thinking, gee, we've been married, 2.5 years. My wife had only known me, as a suit and tie kind of guy, 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and I was like, hey, hon, what do you think about me doing this entirely different career, where you'd be working nights and weekends and, holidays and all that kind of stuff. And she was incredibly supportive. So I took the class, and I was working as a customer service manager of an academic publishing company at the time. And so I would work all week, and then Friday night I'd come home, put on my police uniform, go to the police department, go to roll call, and then go out and patrol all night and come home at like 7 o'clock in the morning, exhausted. But my wife always said you had this big smile on your face, like you really loved what you were doing. So when our daughter was born and we moved to Ohio, that's kind of where, I had the next dinner table conversation. Hey, hon, what do you think about me doing this full time? And again, extremely supportive. I went through all the different testing with through the police academy, a written test, a psychological test, a physical fitness test to get on. And I remember there were 3,000 people that were competing for 100 jobs. And I got into the first class of 50, and there was a second class of 50. And I was old. I was 37 years old when I was a rookie policeman. And I loved it. But I worked in patrol, just running a beat in a police car in uniform. And then I switched over to the drug unit, and I was an undercover drug investigator. And people always laugh. It's like, you were 6'8". How did you possibly, become? And I always tell them that the thing that motivates
people
that
see you all the time everywhere.
They do. They do. And I never changed my appearance. I never grew my hair long. I never do anything like that, because the thing that motivates that business is greed. And as long as you have money, people will sell you drugs, and I had money. We worked a lot of buy busts where we would buy drugs and then arrest the person that did that. So I did that for a number of years. I was on the SWAT team. I was a hostage negotiator, where I was working with people. If you were talking to me, you were probably having the worst day of your life. And then we moved to Texas, and I started my own business and was coaching basketball. And that's when I found out I had this very rare form of cancer.
I would like to come back a little bit to the police officer, your job. What did you find so interesting in this job? Why did you want to be a police officer all your life?
I think it was honestly my calling. People ask me about that, and I kind of put it in perspective for them. It's like, a police officer makes less money than a plumber does. And every time you show up, nobody wants you there. It's never a good thing. You're pulling somebody over to give them a ticket. You're knocking on their door to tell them their grandmother passed away. Whatever the situation, you're arresting them. You're there because they were burglarized, whatever it is. So it's never a good thing when the police are there. And then when you get there, everybody lies to you. Everybody's trying to put their best foot forward to, make it seem like, hey, don't arrest me, arrest that guy. He did this or she did that. And so you think about that, you better get into that job because it's a calling, because you want to make a difference in people's lives, because you want to help people. Because like I said, none of us would go to work if, we made less money than a plumber, nobody wanted us at our job, and everybody lied to us while we were there, if you think about it. So you get into that job because it's a calling, because you want to make a difference, and that's exactly why I got into that job. It was something since I was a young boy that I knew I had an interest in, I wanted to do, and I was good at it.
And we mentioned the word, the reason for why you're here, and now you said it's to become a police officer. That's what you realized as a young boy already, and now you call it a calling. So what advice could you give to especially young kids that want to become something, or that's looking for the reason why they're on Earth, and to find their own calling? Because I think the generation, especially nowadays, because there's the problem of choice, they sometimes have too many things to choose from, and it's really hard to find their own identity. So what advice could you give to them to really find their calling?
That's, since I've had cancer, that's, I told you what I thought my purpose was in law enforcement. And once I was finished with that, I don't think that was limited to my only purpose. And I think my purpose now, having had cancer for a number of years, is to help people find their purpose or their why. And that's really kind of a passion of mine. I recall a quote I heard a long time ago from a novelist here in the United States by the name of Mark Twain, who said that the two most important days of our lives are the day that we're born and the day that we figure out why. And when I speak to groups, I often ask this question: do you have any idea why you were put on this earth? And sometimes I'll even take that a step further and ask them, do you know why you were born at this time? Why weren't you born 5,000 years ago or 50,000 years in the future? There's a reason that you were born, and that reason involves finding and living your purpose. I believe that we're all destined to live uncommon and extraordinary lives. And again, we've talked about this a little bit. That has nothing to do with the kind of job you have, how much money you make, etc. We are not all born with the same gifts and talents, but we all have the ability to become the best person that we're capable of becoming. The problem is most people that I've seen, and maybe you've had the same experience, take an unintentional approach to living. And by living a casual life, their dreams, their goals, their ambitions, they become a casualty of that unplanned living. I've had plenty of time, and I've told you this before, to think about my own death. And I can't imagine standing in front of our Creator and being unable to account for the gifts and the talents that I've been given at birth and that I didn't use to make the world a better place. It's been said that the wealthiest places on earth are our cemeteries because they're areas rich in businesses never started, books never written, relationships never pursued, and dreams never realized. There's a Native American Blackfoot proverb that I heard years ago that I absolutely love, and it goes like this. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. The only way to find your purpose, and whatever that is to search it out and basically to try things that make you uncomfortable, to fight against the status quo, to experience things that frankly scare you. Finding your why or your purpose is essential because it's the reason that you were born. And the only way to discover that reason is to be open to it and search for it with your heart.
Yeah, great. The question I asked myself, getting diagnosed with cancer and being so religious and believing in God, how do you think, why, I call it God, did choose you to get cancer? So how can you deal with this question when there is a reason for everything, why we are on earth? Why put God cancer on you and not on somebody else?
See, I don't look at it that way. I don't think God said, I'm going to give you cancer. I don't believe that God, sits up and, if you want to call it heaven, and kind of picks and chooses and says, hey, you're going to get cancer, you're not, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that. I think God lets just life happen to us. And, I've asked this question before because my cancer is a form of melanoma. And most people would think of melanoma as a skin type of disease. I was out in the sun too much or something like that. Well, my form of melanoma appeared on the bottom of my foot. And I can promise you this, I never laid out in the sun as a kid with my feet up in the air trying, to tan the bottom of my feet. Never did that. So, you look at that and I learned that there's another form of melanoma, which is similar to the one I have, which appears on the palms of your hands or the bottom of your feet. And then there's even another form of melanoma that appears in the mucous membrane, so in your nose or your mouth or something like that. And so, I've asked my doctor numerous times, why did I get this? Why did this happen? Because I have been genetically tested for the 88 different genes that they either know of or they suspect cause different forms of cancer. Everything from breast cancer to lung cancer. And I have no mutations whatsoever in any of my genes. So why did I get this cancer? And my doctor's like, I don't know. The only thing we can possibly think of is that it might, and again, this is a huge might, it might be related to a trauma that you had to that area of your body, of your foot. And I'm like, I never had a trauma there.
Like a foot injury or something?
Yeah,
or
like you broke a bone, or you had some type of injury or trauma to that area. And I'm 60 years old and I can never recall an area where I've had an injury to that. So that being said, I don't know why I got it. I wish I did. I wish I had the answer to that question, but I don't blame God for it. I just use the resources that that God has given me, the faith, the love. You know, I always, people ask me about God, and I kind of try to put it this way. You know, God is the greatest manifestation of love that we've ever seen or heard or felt. And I mean, if you think about that, if we're created in the image and likeness of God, and God knew every dumb thing we were going to do, every stupid thing, every sin we were going to make, every bad thing that we were going to do, and yet still loved us enough to put us on this earth to try to make, you know, with certain gifts, to try to make this world a better place. I mean, that to me is, I mean, I know I've sinned constantly, you know, my whole life. And the fact that you love me enough to put me here, that to me is something that I have a hard time wrapping my mind around, my head around, that kind of love is so powerful and so amazing that I just use that love to help me fight this disease.
It's a very nice belief system you got there for you, and yeah, we admire this. It's very nice to like hear those words. Me personally, I'm an atheist, and I think other people out there are atheists too. And but I think the most important part is to have tolerance for each other, and everyone creates their belief system, which is great. You know, that you can have this love and feel this love and those emotions. So I want to know from you, like being a cancer warrior, and there's probably other people out there that are cancer warriors too. I mean, everyone has at least one person in the family or with their friends that died from cancer or like sick, and maybe most of them don't have a belief system that you have. Could you give any advice to them what they can do, like to still feel the love and you know, like the compassion that you feel, yeah, to keep on believing?
Yeah, I guess it probably, I mean, to answer your question, probably easier to sort of tell you my cancer journey, because I think in there, you know, it helps to understand what I've been through, and then it'll probably make you understand a little bit about why you know, some people think I'm kind of nuts in the way I approach things, but you know, absolutely in my life, the greatest challenge that I've ever experienced. I had knee surgeries in high school and things like that, but certainly for me, the greatest challenge occurred in early 2012 when I was diagnosed with this rare form of melanoma that presented on the bottom of my foot. By the time the cancer was detected, it had spread to one of the lymph nodes in my groin on that leg. And because my disease is so rare, again, there's only about 6,500 people in the United States. I don't know the world numbers for this type of cancer, but only about 6,500 people in the U.S. that get this type of cancer every year. So it's not a huge population. And so it was recommended that I go be treated at MD Anderson Cancer Center, which is probably the premier cancer center in the world, because literally people come from all over the world to be treated at MD Anderson for whatever kind of cancer that they have. So while I was at MD Anderson, I had 2 surgeries to eliminate the tumor and all the lymph nodes in my groin, and I had a skin graft to close the wound on the bottom of my foot. And when I healed, I was put on a weekly injection of the drug called interferon to help keep the disease from coming back. My oncologist used to say we're trying to kick the can down the road. You know, the longer we can go, the more therapies, the more options you'll have. Interferon, at least for me, was a horrible, nasty, debilitating drug. And I took those weekly interferon injections for 4 years and 7 months before the medication became so toxic to my body that I ended up in the intensive care unit with a fever of 108 degrees, which usually isn't compatible with being alive. But fortunately, I was at a very premier emergency room that was able to stabilize me and get me to the ICU. The interferon, when I took it, gave me severe flu-like symptoms. I mean, we've all had the flu, you know, for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. I lost 50 pounds during my therapy. I was constantly nauseous, fatigued, chilled. Even my ability to taste food diminished. And this misery went on, and I actually counted it up, for over 1,660 days. And the one thing I learned during all my pain and suffering is that you have 2 choices. You can either succumb to the debilitating discomfort and misery, or you can learn to embrace it and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual. And I chose the latter, but I want your listeners to understand that there were days that I felt so poorly and I was in so much agony that I literally prayed to die. I just wanted out of this life. Each day was a struggle to use my mind to override the apathy and the distress that my body was feeling. I realize that pain and discomfort can beat people to their knees and keep them there if they let it, but I also came to appreciate that I could use that pain and suffering to make me a stronger and tougher individual. I was no better at dealing with pain and discomfort than the next person, but every day I found a way to survive with the knowledge that I'd need to do it again the following morning. I wish I could be here to say that this was a feel-good experience, that I had conquered my cancer. But I can't. I mean, the melanoma that had plagued me for 6 years until I got off the interferon returned in 2017. And in January of 2018, my only treatment option was the amputation of my left foot. The disease returned again in 2019, requiring 2 more surgeries on my leg. And then last year, an undiagnosed tumor in my ankle grew large enough to fracture my tibia, my shin bone. And that resulted in the amputation of my leg above the knee in the middle of a global pandemic. I mean, my wife literally dropped me off at the hospital. I was by myself. I was the only surgery that day. I was in the hospital for 48 hours, had my leg taken off, and I was out. And, you talk about being scared. I certainly was scared. And then on top of that, further testing found that I have multiple tumors in each of my lungs, and my doctor's not real optimistic about my long-term longevity in terms of living. But I refused to be a victim, to this cancer, to this malignancy. And I vowed to continue my fight. I knew the only way that cancer could win is if I gave up or I gave in to the disease or it killed me. I can certainly stand here in front of you guys and say, I understand what it's like to fight for your life. And the one thing I've learned is that as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. But I also came to appreciate that the responsibility for altering your life is entirely up to you. Whining, complaining, and blaming others for your circumstances are certainly not going to enhance your experience.
Yeah, very sad to hear this.
But also empowering. I think it's a bit of both. So I have to say, it's really mixed feelings here. So it's like you tell us this that's your life story, and it's of course it's very, very sad. But like I also feel like how you present it and how you tell us your story. It's very empowering
and impressive. Yeah. And what do you appreciate in life most? So maybe this is the thing that keeps you alive. Is it the love from your family, from your wife? What is it really inside you?
I think and I kind of call it the 3 F's: faith, family, and friends. And as I said, and we've talked about my faith life, I have a great family. My wife and I have been married for 27 years. We have 1 child, a daughter who is an adult now. She's 24. She's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is a lieutenant in the military. And they're my rock. They really are people that I know without a doubt that if it hadn't been for my wife, I'd be dead by now. She's recognized things, hey, this doesn't look right. We need to get to the hospital. We need to get to the emergency room, whatever it is. When I first developed cancer, our daughter was in high school, and my wife and I made the decision very early on that we would never lie to her. We would never, try to sugarcoat anything. Now, we would certainly tell her the truth in an age-appropriate way for somebody, as she grew up. But, now she's an adult and she helps us out, when she can in terms of getting me to the hospital and picking me up and just being there. So my family is incredibly important to me. And then my friends. And one of the things I found when I got cancer was there were a lot of people that distanced themselves from me. They wanted to kind of, ooh, you got cancer. Ooh, that's not good. I'm going to kind of fade over into the background. I'm going to fade over into this way. And then there were other people who I remember I guess, let me back up for a second. One of the things that's always bothered me, and I've done it, and maybe you have done it, is when somebody's having, it doesn't have to be, something major. Maybe you're going in to, you have your tonsils out or a minor surgery or something like that. And we always say, hey, if you need anything, just let me know. And that has driven me crazy since I've had cancer, because all these people say that, hey, if you need anything, let me know. Well, guess what? I don't have time to let you know what you need to do to help me. The same things that, that you do at your house, the grocery shopping, the garbage has to be taken out, the grass needs to be cut, the dog needs to go for a walk. Those are the same things that I have to have done at my house, but I don't have the time to do them, or my wife is with me and we don't have the time to do that. So it's kind of a nice story. I had a 95-year-old friend of mine who was in World War II, and it was after my first surgery, and I didn't need to be in the hospital after the surgery, so I was able to come home. I'd been home about half an hour, and my cell phone rang, and his name was Bud, and it was Bud. And he's like, hey, I know you just got home. I know you just had surgery. Can I come over for just 10 minutes? And I'm like, sure, Bud, no problem. Come on over. And, about 15 minutes later, here comes Bud with a fully cooked chicken that he had bought at the store and a pan of cream cheese Danish. He's like, here's dinner for tonight, and here's breakfast for the morning. He didn't sit on the sidelines and try to convince himself that he was playing in the game. He actually got involved. I know you guys need food. Here's food. So I always encourage people, the same things that you do at your house, other people, when they're in a difficult situation, need done at their house. So don't ask, just do something. Hey, I'm going to pick up some food for you. I'm going to have it for you when you get home. Or, hey, I'm going to cut the grass for you while you're gone. Or whatever it is, just get involved. Don't, say, hey, if you need anything, let me know, and try to take yourself off the hook. If you really love me, if you really care about me, then get involved and help me out.
We're taking a quick break and be right back into the show.
Like Terry has a community in his church, we have a community too on our Discord server.
To join us, visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com and sign up for our newsletter.
On our website, you'll find our Unpopular People shop with unpopular people clothes and fitness services that represent our community.
And now back to the show. And are you in a wheelchair now because you got your foot amputated? Do you have to be in a wheelchair all the time? And I also really wanted to know because like all around the world we kind of hear every time, in the US it's quite hard with insurance and that they pay for certain things when you go to the doctor. And so how is it with you? Are you like covered like in any way? And how does it work?
Yes. So I am in a wheelchair. I have a wheelchair. I also have a prosthetic leg that unfortunately I have not been well enough with my chemotherapy and my clinical trial drug treatments to get enough time with the physical therapist to learn to walk with that. Because my insurance will only cover so many visits to the physical therapist. So I haven't wanted to use those when I was in a weakened state and I go to the physical therapist and then I can't go for a month and you lose all that. So from that perspective, it's been great. I mean, the insurance does cover things. We have what's called a high deductible insurance plan. So we have to reach a certain goal, and it's many thousands of dollars out of our pocket before the insurance kicks in and then picks up everything else. So from that perspective, we know that, and so my wife, in her job, she has that money taken out of her paycheck every week or every 2 weeks when she gets paid. And that helps us to save for that so that we don't, it's not like, oh, hey, you got to pay this $5,000 bill. Well, we don't have $5,000, I mean, most people don't have $5,000 laying around and that. So we kind of budget for it in that regard. But other than that, the insurance picks up a lot of it. And the fact that I'm on a clinical trial, which is there's a company that's trying to determine whether this drug they've developed is effective or not. They pick up some of the expense of that so that I'm not saddled with all that as well.
And with the clinical trial, do you see any anything positive happening already, or do you have any benefit, like feeling from this already?
I do, as a matter of fact. So I was on a clinical trial drug for 4 cycles, which was a week on, 2 weeks off, a week on, so 4 different cycles, and have just started last week. They added a new drug to it, which they're hoping will increase the positive benefits. Basically, the tumors in my lungs have shrunk by over 20% at this point in time. So yes, we're seeing.
That's good. Yeah, good to hear.
It's good for me. The other people on the trial with me, not so good. One of them has passed away. The other ones are not seeing the positive benefit that I am. Which for me, kind of, well, would you continue with this drug for only one person? If only one person's getting a benefit. So far, the answer to that is yes, and that. So most clinical trials are not successful. I mean, to the point where I don't know what the number is exactly, but I would guess it's somewhere 70 or 80% of the clinical trials have no benefit at all. And, they would try it. It didn't work. We'll move on to something else. So I feel very lucky that I have seen some benefit from this.
Okay, that's very good to hear. And I have 2 more questions, Elisa, because it's very, very, very interesting and very inspiring. So thank you so much so far. But I also wanted to know, because you have like those. How do you call, like a tumor in your lung as well? Is it called a tumor? Yeah. So you have a tumor in your.
It is.
Yeah. Did the doctors tell you anything in terms of COVID to be like especially like careful with this, because it affects the lungs as well? Might it have an impact? So do you have to be really careful with this at the moment?
I do. If I got COVID, I would probably die. Just because of how it ravages the lungs and the fact that my lungs are compromised with multiple tumors. I wish it was just one in each lung. I mean, there are several in each lung. So yeah, and I literally don't leave the house. I stay at home unless I go to the hospital for treatment. I do not leave the house. And our daughter, being in the military, has received both doses of the vaccine for COVID, so that's very helpful. My wife works out of the house. We have our groceries delivered and things like that. So we literally have been, sequestered in the house for, it seems like forever, but it's one of those things which why, doing things like this with you guys, a podcast, and it gives me a purpose. It gives me an opportunity to help other people while I'm shut in, in my house. So I appreciate that from your end tremendously.
So is it an emotional burden at the moment to be like at the house, or do you see like some point of enjoyment, like besides our interview, of course?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like my wife. I like my daughter. So it's not for me. It's like, it's like, God, I hate these people. I'm cooped up in the house with them. No, for me, I feel very fortunate. I love my family and I love being around them. And like I said, they've been great to me. So I like that. And now, would I like to get out more? When we have the sort of the guys in the neighborhood, when the weather's nice, we'll have these like socially distanced lunches where, we'll be like 6 feet apart on the driveway or, in the street, and we'll be eating lunch and talking to each other and stuff like that. And, when it's cold here, it's winter, in the U.S. now. And so we can't do that. And we can't go to each other's homes and that. So I do miss that a little bit, but they're great about texting me and keeping me, hey, what's going on? How's treatment going? Hey, my son's doing this, or, we're doing that, or did you see the game this week, kind of thing. So there's a little bit of a connection there, which certainly helps me. And there's a couple friends of mine that they just call. It's like, hey, every week we'll talk to each other, and, we'll get out and we'll Zoom and just chat and that. So that takes some of that pressure off. And like I said, if I didn't like my family, this would be horrible, but I do. So it's great.
Yeah, that's very good. And hey, how good is the internet nowadays? I mean, we can be so happy that we have this opportunity that we can talk to you in the US, like those two Germans sitting somewhere in Australia, you know. So it's really good to have this nowadays. I want to have one more question about the emotional part, and I'm very curious because you worked in the drug enforcement as well, and I wanted to know if you had any experience yourself, or what's your opinion on like psychedelics in terms of giving people purpose in like a hard time to why you have cancer, for example. I heard about like people doing psychedelics like mushrooms or LSD, and it gave them a purpose during this time, or they saw, even if they lost all faith, they got back to some kind of a belief in their own life. What's your opinion on that?
I know that I'm at a university hospital here in Colorado, and I know they are cannabis, marijuana is legal here in the state of Colorado for adults. But there's some trials going on within the university to see the benefit of it. All I know is the cannabis one. I don't know if they're doing other ones in terms of LSD or mushrooms and things like that. For me, it's like you said, I spent a number of years putting people in prison who, were selling those drugs or possessing those drugs and stuff like that. So for me, it almost seems hypocritical that, hey, you're in prison and now I'm using this stuff, and that's kind of how I look at it, because I've had people who've said, hey, I'll get some weed and, we'll smoke it and you'll feel better. And I'm like, yeah, I might, but I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's kind of like, I've never been drunk in my life, and I know that's kind of hard to believe. I've never been drunk. So it was a lot easier to arrest people who were driving drunk and things like that, because, it's like, yeah, you did that. No, I didn't. I didn't do that. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy for me to kind of be like, well, should I or shouldn't I? And, is this right or is this wrong? And like I said, I've had people volunteer I'll go get some weed and we can smoke it. And I'm like, I can't do it. At least at this point in time, I just can't do it.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And for all listeners out there, you don't have to get drunk once in your life. It's all good not to be drunk. It's like we enjoy an alcohol-free life as well. So yeah, if you have a past, that's fine. But in the future, you don't have to get drunk again.
Yeah, I always found it was more fun to go to parties and watch people that were drunk, stay sober, because, the goofy things that people do when they're intoxicated is kind of funny. And in my days in law enforcement, I always used to say, if we didn't have alcohol, drugs, or mental illness, you would need nearly as many police officers as you have today.
I would like to find out more about your daily routines and how a day, especially now with COVID, maybe it's a little bit different, how a day in your life looks like at the moment.
Well, I guess it depends on the day. So if I'm in treatment, that's a day that usually starts around 4:30 in the morning. Getting up, I have a blog that I do every morning, so I do that before I go to the hospital. Eating breakfast, going to the hospital, and then it's just a long day. It's blood work, seeing my doctor, getting an infusion. I react fairly violently to the infusion. I shake, I throw up, I do all kinds of really ugly things, which sounds horrible, but when you realize that that's your body doing what it's supposed to do, it's reacting to that drug and hopefully killing the cancer, it's a lot easier to handle. And then because I'm in a clinical trial, there's a lot of blood work that is taken, to measure the amount of drug that's in my system. There's a lot of vital checks, EKGs, blood pressure, pulse oximeter, how much oxygen, and things like that. So that can last a long time. I mean, the Mondays when I have these clinical trials, I usually get to the hospital. I have my first blood work at 6:40 in the morning, and a lot of times I don't get home until sometimes 10:30 at night, and then I have to be back at the hospital the next morning. So it's a lot, but it's one of those things where if you know it's going to happen, you can kind of prepare yourself for it. On the days when I don't have treatment, I spend a lot of time working on my blog. I wrote a book. I'm trying to work on a second book. I do a lot of reading. I I like understanding, the mind. I like, why did this person succeed and that person didn't? And so that's always been real kind of interesting to me, especially being a basketball coach. You can you imagine, making your living with, in my case, it was high school. So, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, they're not mature. Their prefrontal cortex hasn't fused together. Their synapses haven't, all the things that you're like, and you're trying to make your living relying on these individuals to do what you ask them to do. So it's kind of funny in that regard. And in all honesty, I nap and as I said, I pray and things like that, because this takes a lot out of me physically as well as mentally. So that's pretty much my day. I go to bed, probably 9 o'clock at night, because I like getting up early. I'm not one of these people that's, when I was a teenager and I like to sleep till noon and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore. I like getting up early when it's dark, and I most of my police career was spent working nights, and I love that. I love the nights. I love the hunt. I love the prowl, whatever you want to, trying to find what the bad guys were doing and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun for me.
Great. Tell us a little bit about your books and your blog. What are they about?
So the blog is it's entitled Motivational Check, and I got the name when I was in the police academy, when I was studying and learning to be a police officer. It was a phrase or something that anybody could shout out, because part of being a cop, there was the classroom side where you learned about laws and search and seizure and things like that. And then there was the physical side, the running, the push-ups and all that kind of stuff. And so if you were having a bad day and, you were hurting, you were sore, you were tired, whatever it was, you could just yell out motivational check, and the rest of the class would respond with 84, and we were the 84th recruit class. And it was just a way of letting people know, hey, you're not alone. We're all hurting here. We're all having a tough time. Hang in there. We're a class. We're together. This isn't an individual thing. We're all together, and we're here for you. So when I started this blog, I wanted it to be something where people could get motivation or inspiration quickly. And so every day I put up a new thought. Every Monday, I have the Monday morning motivational message, which is either a video or a story that somebody could read. I put up different stories, different videos, a couple times a week, but it's quick. I mean, none of the videos are more than 5 minutes long, and you can go to the blog and you can get a quick hit of inspiration and you can go on with your day, because I know people are busy. So that's the blog. The book is called Sustainable Excellence, the 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And it's a book that was born out of two conversations that I had. One was with a former basketball player of mine who she moved to Colorado, where I live, with her boyfriend. And my wife and I had dinner with them a couple times. And I said to her one day, I'm really kind of excited to watch you find and live your purpose. And she got real quiet. And she was like, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? And I said, I don't know what your purpose is. That's what your life should be about. That your life should be about finding that purpose and then living it. And I know I kind of left her like, oh my gosh, that was pretty heavy, pretty deep and that kind of stuff. But that was one conversation. And then I had another conversation with a basketball player who connected with me on LinkedIn, and who said, could you tell me what you think are the most important things I need to learn to not only be successful in my job, but successful in life. And I didn't want to give him the normal stuff that we, get up early, work hard and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to get something kind of, into his soul, so to speak. And so I thought about it for a while, and I started writing notes, and I'd come back to it from time to time periodically. And eventually I had these 10 principles, and I started looking at them. I'm like, well, I have a life story that would go with that principle, or I know somebody who has a life story that would go with this one. And so I put those all together in kind of a book, and I gave the book, the rough draft, to friends of ours. And he was a former Navy SEAL, tough guy. He's in the financial services industry now. His wife is a former prosecutor, and is I don't know if that a prosecutor, somebody who works for the state and tries people. If you know that, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And now she's a real estate attorney, and they're young. They're in their early 30s, and they have a couple kids. I said, "Will you read this and tell me if you think it's baloney or if you think it's good?" And they read it. And they were like, "This is great. You've got to move forward with this. You've got to get this published." And then I had an 87-year-old man who read the book and got in contact with me, and he said, "I wish I would have had these principles when I was younger, because if I would have had a much better life." And that really kind of made me feel like I was on track with what I wanted, with what this book was about. And it's not, it's 124 pages. It's a very easy read. It's not a long book, but I think it's packed with a lot of good information. And I literally wrote the book between the time I had my leg amputated in April and the time I started chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs in June. So it was, I always say that I wrote it, but I think it was inspired by God. I really kind of think God was kind of like, "Look, just sit down at the computer and I'm going to tell you what to," I mean, God never talked to me. Don't get me wrong. There's kind of an old joke that says when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So I mean, God never talked to me. I don't want anybody to think that was the case, but I really think that it was inspired by God. It's kind of like, "Look, I want you to get this stuff down because I want to get it out there, and I want people to learn from it, and hopefully we can help some people along the way." So that's a long answer to your questions.
That's fine. That's really good. Thank you. And where do you get your quotes from that you post on your blog? Are they related to something personally when you put them on your website every day, or where do you get them from?
I get them from all over. Books that I've read, books that I have. I get them from the internet, from YouTube. They're quotes that are more inspirational or motivational, and so if they kind of fall into that category, then I'll use them. I probably have 250 pages of quotes. I don't know how many thousands of quotes that would end up being. I've never counted them, but I have all these, and I just go to that document every morning and I kind of start reading, and I just wait till one of them hits me, and it's like, yeah, that's going to be the one for today, for whatever reason, and I put it on the blog, and they're not my quotes. I mean, they're mostly famous people or influential people and stuff like that, and I don't ever want anybody to think they are my quotes, so I cite them and who said it and things like that. But there's just so much good stuff out there that if you just take a minute and let it hit you and let it resonate in your brain, and then get on with your day. I think it's impactful in a way.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll definitely put this in the show notes as well, so our listeners can find it in there as well. I have some more question about your kids, your two daughters, because I'm so lucky to still have my dad in my life. At least, unfortunately, she doesn't. But I want to know, how do you? So how do you prepare your kids for this? How do you talk to your kids about your disease, and how do they handle it? Do you have any idea? Do they give insights about their emotions to you as well?
I wish my daughter did more. And again, we only have the one daughter.
Sorry.
That's okay. I kind of wish we had a couple more. We've been so blessed, but like I said, we never lied to our daughter about anything. We would, Dad's in the hospital, or Dad's got to have his foot amputated or his leg amputated or whatever it was, and a lot of this happened when she was in college and things like that, and she wasn't there, and that, but we've always involved her. And even when I found out I had the tumors in the lungs and I was losing my leg, and that, one of the things I did when I was healthy enough was my wife and I went to the cemetery into the mortuary, and I've planned my funeral. I mean, down to the mass that we're going to have, to where I'm going to be buried, to the casket that I'm going to be in. And I had people tell me that that's defeatist. You're basically saying that you're not going to make it. And I look at those people and I'm like, well, I got news for you. We're all going to die. We're all going to die, but we're not all going to really live. And that's really kind of an important part to me. The dying doesn't scare me because I lived my life. It's the people that don't live their life, that live a casual life, that never try to reach their dreams, that never try to figure out their purpose. Those are the people that at the end of their lives, those are the ones who, I want another day, I want another month, I want another year. Well, you know what? Sorry, you had all these years, you had all this time, and you didn't use it. Why would you expect to get more time? I mean, it'd be great if you could, but that's not necessarily going to be the case. And so for me, dying is not something that scares me. It's not something that I'm worried about. So I try to live my life in such a way so that my daughter can emulate that. I can be a role model to her in life. And I think what I'm doing with my cancer journey is really showing her more than telling her how to have a good death, how to get to the point where when it's your time, you're not kicking and screaming. Kind of going back to that Native American Blackfoot saying that I said, told you, when you're born, you cry and the world rejoice. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want to leave with her, that, you're going to die someday. Make sure you live a good life so that when you die, it's like, you know what, no problem. I had a great life.
What do you want other people to say about you when you have to die one day? So what should I say about you?
That's a great question. And one of the things that when I talk to people about finding and living their purpose is just that. You've kind of hit the nail on the head. Very few people, I think, look forward enough to say, what is my legacy? What am I going to do? What am I leaving behind? And it's not, nobody's ever going to name a street after me or a building after me or anything like that. And in all honesty, I could care less if they did. And what really I think is important is the lives that we touch while we're here, the people that we motivate, the people that we inspire. I had a nurse last week, a young lady who had cared for me for the first time on her own. She had just come to the unit and was in training when she initially cared for me, and now she was on her own. And she said, "I got a story to tell you. Remind me to tell you." And I thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. And so I kind of grabbed her when it was a slow period. I said, "What was the story you were going to tell me?" And she said, "I was ready to give up nursing. I'd called my parents. I told them I was going to quit nursing. I was going to go to work for Amazon. And I was, I just wanted out of this." She had a friend that had died. She was kind of, in a funk and a depression. And she said, "And then I met you and I heard your story and I saw what you'd been through. And I realized I couldn't quit, that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing." And, if she hadn't have told me that, I would have never known that. But I was really, certainly touched that she shared that with me. But think about all the people that you touch in your life on a daily basis that you probably have no idea that they look at you and say, "Man, I wish I was like her," or I wish I was like him, and you don't know who those people are. So if you can, think about, what's my legacy? My legacy is the people that I touch. My legacy is the people that I motivate. My legacy is the people who look at my story and say, "Man, his life sucks. I thought my life sucked. My life's not nearly as bad as his. So, you know what? I got nothing to complain about. The guy lost his foot. He lost his leg. He's probably dying, and he's still out there trying to make a difference. What do I have to complain about?" If I can motivate people that way, if I can, if that can be my legacy, then, and I hope it is, then I'll be very, 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 very happy with that. But that's one thing I always tell people. It's like, let your life be focused on the decisions that you made, not the decisions that you didn't or that other people made for you. You make those decisions. And I'm one of those people, and I'm sure my doctor is probably ready to hit me over the head sometimes. I'm always asking questions. Well, why are you doing this? Or why are we doing that? Why don't we do this instead of like that? I'm not one of those people that just say, well, you're a doctor, I'm just going to turn everything over to you. There are some people that feel comfortable with that. You went to medical school. I don't know anything about it. I'm not like that. I want to know why you're doing what you're doing. So I want to be actively involved in my life. I want to be actively involved in my cancer, in my treatment, and that kind of thing. So that's one of the things at the end of your life. I want people to look back and say, you know what? My life was my life. It was the life that I made based on the decisions that I made, not that somebody else made for me.
And you focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. And I guess there's also, even for you, there are people out there where you think like, oh, I'm actually really blessed with what I have. I have a wife that I love and she loves me back. I have a daughter that I love and she loves me back. I have found my faith and I've found my purpose. So that's very interesting. Like if you can inspire someone else, and there's probably so many people that inspired you in your life. I think that's great. And also what you said earlier, there's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know if you have heard of it.
I have, and I've read it. Yes, yeah, Stephen Covey.
Yeah, it's really nice, because like what you said, he describes a similar situation there as well. Like you should look ahead and imagine like your own funeral. What do you want people to say about yourself? So thank you for that really nice question, Elisa. And
that was a great question.
Yeah, and I also wanted to know now, like speaking about your daughters and how they handle it. What do you think could young people learn in school to understand life better, to have it a bit easier to find a purpose? Because I think if there's one chance we can change the world, it's with like young people, especially like changing the education system in every country. Like every country has a bit of a different education system, but there's so many similarities. So what do you think every school needs to have in the whole world to make the world a better place?
I think a couple things. Number one, I think we need to, at least in the United States, we need to get back teaching civics and history. You've got to understand how this country was formed, how fortunate you are to live in a country where, you can do or become anything you want with hard work. There's nobody telling you you've got to work and give you this amount. I mean, I know we do in taxes, but you've got to work and the state will provide you with doing all those kind of things. But the one thing that I tell people, especially people who contact me and say, I want to be a police officer, what do you recommend for me? One of the things I tell them is put your cell phone down. Get out there and talk to people. You need to be a good cop. You need to be able to talk to the homeless guy on the street and the guy that lives in the penthouse. You need to be able to understand where they're coming from. And I see that with so many young people. They can't talk to you. They can text the hell out of you. They'll text you, but they can't sit and have a conversation with you. And for me, that's a scary kind of thing. It's like, what are we leaving the world to? Where we're only going to be able to communicate through text. And the same thing. You would call me, an SOB on a text, but you wouldn't call that to me to my face. And that, the bullying
What's
that goes.
SOB?
It's a.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a bad word that I don't want to use on your podcast.
Okay,
but you'd call me a name, or you would bully me, or you would say, your ears are too big, or I don't like the color of your hair, or whatever whatever you do. You'd say that to me on a text, or you'd say that to me, on the internet, but you'd never say that to me to my face. And that to me. That goes back to integrity and character. If you don't have the character to say that to me to my face, then you sure as heck shouldn't say it to me over the the internet or over your cell phone or something like that. So I think we need to get back to connecting with each other as people. Not with we've got all this technology to help us keep what's the word I'm looking for? To be more connected with each other, and yet I feel we are probably less connected than we've ever been in the history of the world, because we just, everything's got to be over text. Well, just have a conversation with me. Just talk to me. Pick up the phone. Let's talk. Why do you have to text me all the time? So from that perspective, I think history and civics, understanding where we're coming from, where we are now, how we got to this place is important in the classroom. And then from just a person point of view, I think we need to be able to have more conversations with each other.
Do you have any idea or advice how people can connect to speak to each other and not just over the internet texting or chatting with each other? Is there a way?
Yeah, I think there is. And I devoted an entire chapter in my book to listening. And when I say listening, not listening to respond, because we all do that. You're saying something and I'm like, oh yeah, hurry up and say something because I want to get in there with with my 2 cents. But listening to understand, where are you coming from? And as a hostage negotiator, one of the things that we had to get good at was, we were probably a block away, talking to somebody who'd barricaded themselves in a house. So I don't have you in front of me. I don't have the visual clues of understanding what you're saying. So I had to figure out what was going on based on what you were saying, what you weren't saying, or how you were saying it, and try to talk you out of a very bad situation, sometimes a horrible situation. Sometimes those situations ended with people taking their own lives. And I never lost any sleep over that, because I did everything I could to help you get to that situation. So I think it's real important that we put our phones down and we just talk to each other. That we have a conversation, that this is great technology, and don't get me wrong. I love it and I use it just as much as you guys do, but I think it's hurting us in terms of being able to connect as human beings to each other.
That's why our slogan is also listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success. And that's what we're trying to do with those interviews and those conversations with people like you, to really make the world understand that there's maybe your neighbor, maybe like the person who works in the supermarket, maybe your police officer, or maybe like the poor kid in Indonesia, or like everywhere in the whole world. You have people all around you, and really getting those conversations online. Don't focus on the influencers. Don't focus on all the superstars. They do a great job, and there's like so many good people out there that are really, really popular, and we don't want to put them down in any way. But it's we also think to really reconnect the world and really speak to each other, and really listen and learning from each other. It's definitely necessary to have those conversations that we have today.
Also, the unpopular people, let's for example, the drug dealers, or people that are gay, or people that just live a little bit a different life, and they all have a reason why they are in this situation, why they live their life like it is. And so this is, we want everybody to encourage to tell the world why they live this life like this. And you can learn from everyone, all of these people you can learn something from, and just talk with other people and let them know. Yeah, please.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things and I was in a lot of ways kind of unique in this from a law enforcement perspective. I wanted to know the people I arrested. I wanted to know, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What do you want to do? I know you're in the back of my police car in handcuffs and you're going to jail, but tell me about you. And the thing that I didn't like, or the thing that kind of made me nervous, is you had so many, especially young minority men, who, when you asked them, what are your goals? What are your dreams? They didn't have any. I mean, if you were a drug dealer, you were of the mindset that, well, I'm probably not going to live to be 30 years old, so I might as well live fast and live big right now, because there's going to be another drug dealer that's probably going to shoot me and kill me and take over my territory. So they had no goals. They had no dreams. And I used to think how sad that was, that your life, you thought your life was going to end at 30. Maybe it's going to end earlier. And that made me incredibly sad that these young people didn't have those goals. But you're right, they have a story. Why did you get here? And, like I said, I work nights a lot, and we had, especially for juveniles, we had curfew laws where, you couldn't be out after a certain period of time if you were a certain age. And it was not uncommon for me, to grab a kid that was 12 years old that was out on a school night at 3:00 in the morning. Well, I'm telling you right now, nothing good happens after midnight. I always used to tell my daughter that nothing good happens after midnight. It's drunks. You don't want to be out.
Well, some parties can be great after
some
midnight.
people they can. Don't get me wrong. You're right. But I mean, from a law enforcement point of view, not a lot of good things happen after midnight. And so, you get a 12-year-old kid out at 3:00 in the morning, and then you take him home and you realize his situation is, his dad is in prison. His mom is a prostitute. He's living with his 82-year-old grandmother who goes to bed at 8:00 at night and has no supervision of him whatsoever. Now you understand the situation. Now there's a story behind just a kid who's out breaking the law. There's a story behind that.
Thank you very much. And as you know, our podcast is called Unpopular People. So you mentioned earlier, like you felt very sad hearing from the truck dealers or from the criminals or whoever you had in your police car, who were very often from some sort of minority or different whatever group they are from or whatever background they're from. But do you imagine you were popular, like you were heard all over the world, you were like the new Tony Robbins in this world, or you whatever you do to be like famous and popular all over the world. What would you do, or what would you change to make or to stop this from happening in the future, or you won't make it stop of happening in the future, but what advice would be like the most important advice you give to a lot of people out there? What is like the most important thing everyone has to learn to like really try to avoid those situations and try to not even get into it from the first place?
I think it's a cultural kind of thing. I guess I'll kind of acquaint it to this. When there was a newscaster here by the name of Tom Brokaw, very famous man, was on the news every night, and he wrote a book called The Greatest Generation, and it was all about the men and women involved in World War II in helping to defeat Hitler and Mussolini and Japan and that. And what he said was that basically people back in those times, like for us, for the United States, when Pearl Harbor got bombed, the number of people that was like, I've got to get involved. I've got to help. I've got to go enlist. I've got to, whatever it is, the Marines, the Navy, the Army, whatever you did, whatever you enlisted in to help. So the whole mindset back then was, how can I help? What I see today is the whole mindset now is, what's in it for me? And if we can change that mindset, if we can get back to the fact that, it's not in it. It's not what's in it for me. It's how can I help you? How can I make a difference in your life? If we could change that culture, especially in the United States, I can't speak to Germany or Australia or anything like that, but I certainly can look in the United States and look at people who are like, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I'm not going to go over to Afghanistan and fight for my country. I'm just going to sit here and, I'm 30 years old and I'm living in my parents' basement. Well, what are you doing with your life? Nothing. You're doing absolutely nothing with your life. And you want to, and all you care about, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? Maybe if you turn that around and said, how can I help? How can I get involved? How can I make a difference? If we could do that as a society, and whatever, however you want to determine that word, society, a global society, the United States, Germany, Australia, whatever, if we could do that, if we could say, how can I help? How can we help each other? I think that's the one thing, if I was Tony Robbins, that's the one thing I'd concentrate on.
Great. Thank you. Where can people find out more about you?
Probably the easiest place is to go to my blog. So it's motivationalcheck.com, motivationalcheck, all one word.com. You can leave me a note there if you want to send me an email, motivationalcheck at AOL.com. And if you go to Motivational Check, I have a Twitter account, a Facebook account, a LinkedIn account. You can access all those through motivationalcheck.com.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. We put this in the show notes. And we have to come to an end, I think. Unfortunately, time is limited as always in life. So first of all, thank you very much from our side. I say goodbye from my side.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation and really inspiring, I think, for both of us. And we really hope we stay in touch. It was really interesting and that you reached out to us. And we're really grateful that you did, because it's for us it was great to talk to you, and we hope we can keep this up in the future, stay in touch, expand our universe and our community to you and to the people that want to join us as well on this movement to really talk and listen to each other and really helping each other out in whatever situation they find themselves. So thank you very much for sharing your story. That was really, really inspirational. And also thank you very much from my side. And if there are any final words for this episode, there's now the time for it.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll leave you with, first of all, I want to say thank you for giving people like me the forum, the opportunity to get out there and for me, to help as many people as we can, whoever listens to this. I mean, maybe 10 people listen to it, maybe 10,000 people listen to it, but if we can help one person through our conversation, then we've made a difference. I'll leave you with this little quick story. So on my desk, and I'm looking at it right now, I have a Post-it note, and it has 3 sentences on it. And I'll tell you what those 3 sentences are. The first one is, you need to control your mind or it will control you. The second one is, you need to embrace the pain and the suffering that you have in your life and use it to make you a stronger individual. And the third one is, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. So I see that every single day. It's kind of my truths. Those are the truths that I live my life by. I had a nurse at one time who came to me and said, Terry, this treatment that you're on is horrific on your body. It's really devastating. Nobody would blame you if you quit. And I looked at her and I said, they may take me off the study, I may die on the study, but I'll never quit the study. That's just how I'm made. And those truths, those are the things, when I'm in pain, when I'm in suffering, I take that and I turn it inside and I use it as fuel or energy just to make me a tougher individual. So I'll end with that story. I hope everybody finds their truths, the things that make them who they are and that motivate them to get even better. And if you can do that, you're going to have a heck of a life.
Great. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it.
If you want to find out more about Unpopular People, please visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com.
You can also find the show notes about this episode there.
Please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, also on our website.
www.unpopularpeople.com. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.